everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us for this block and for being here to share these films with us at the 29th Annual Hayti Heritage Film Festival. Black Southern film, y'all. I would like to please invite Brad and Aday up to the stage with me, along with PJ, and I think I see James and Omar. One of you, if you would please join me on stage. So, my name is Tamika Galanis, and hi, people! I am the programmer, I'm the film programmer for this year's film festival, and I have to say, I was a bit biased when Who in the Morning came across my desk as a film submission as a proud Bahamian woman. Uh, I immediately got on the horn with Queen Mother Angelique and said, hey, there's something very special that you probably don't know about the relationship between North Carolina and the Bahamas, and we need to make this really special. It's a culmination of events for me, but you know what? I'm working out of order. I'd like to make a few acknowledgments. In the spirit of Black Feminist Film School, I would like to dedicate this conversation to the Ancestral Collective, who have been very strategic in lining things up for this particular conversation to happen today in this particular location. This center was founded in, I think, the mid-1900s, when African Americans were looking to Haiti, the first Black republic, as an example of freedom and resistance. In this particular block, West Africa, of course, is big in its presence. I came here for grad school in 2014, and it was during that time, a girlfriend of mine, Michelle Lanier, hipped me to the fact that I was doing work with Junkanoo and research on Junkanoo, and she said, well, you know North Carolina has a history of Junkanoo. And I said, no, what are you talking about? So in one of the most important autobiographical accounts of enslaved people in the state of North Carolina, Harriet Jacobs substantiates for us the existence of Junkanoo culture in North Carolina in the 1860s. From her place of retreat, she's hiding in her attic for 7 years because of the abuse she endured at the hand of her master. She is able to see and mark time through a hole in the wall. She knows it's Christmas time because the Junkanoos are out, and she gives us a description, right? So imagine how excited I was. I have been speaking about a return, a reunion of North Carolinian Junkanoos and Bahamian Junkanoos since 2014. So in the fall of last year, when this film came across my desk, I nearly leapt from my seat, right? I called and I said, Angelique, I cannot believe that this film has made it to me. The 1 year, in the 29th year, that I would be programming the films, right? I said, what can we do? What can we do to make this very, very special? I said, can you send me a team? And so she said, yes, I will put together a team of Junkanoo commandos, and I will send them to North Carolina to celebrate with you. So I know today is festival day 3, and usually by the last day, we kind of hit a wall. But I'm going to encourage you, please, to not go anywhere, because at the end of tonight, to close the film festival, we will have a participatory Junkanoo rush. These folks have come all the way from Nassau, Bahamas, to make this reunion, this ancestral reunion, right? And to help us close out the festival. Now that, in my very Bahamian way, all protocol has been established, I want to ask a couple of questions about these films. PJ is one of the co-directors of Who in the Mornin. I know what that name means, but can you walk the crowd through what that means?
Good evening, first of all. Thanks for just like including us in this, because it is very special. Once you guys reached out to us, we were like, yeah, this is real, because we do have that tie to the Carolinas, to North Carolina, and I knew I had to be here for it. So thank you again. But Who in the Mornin, you didn't hear it at all in the film. Not one bit of it. But in the Bahamas, we do have Junkanoo, Christmas, and Boxing Day and New Year's Day. And typically it begins at midnight, Christmas night into Boxing Day, and it just goes until people go home, basically, for the most part. No sleep. Everybody's like crazy tired. But later that morning, the announcement of who has won between the different family groups is announced. And, you know, it's basically a chant. It's Who in the Mornin, like who wins in the morning, you know. So that's Who in the Mornin.
Okay, so PJ is being humble about it. When we say Who in the Mornin, this is another similarity in cultures, right? It can be an affirmation. It can also be a war cry, because Junkanoo competition is big, big, big business. It's very important. So we have the commandos with us. They are a combination of different Junkanoo groups, which is spectacular all in itself. In the tradition of African call and response, if I say Who in the Mornin, I want you guys to say commandos, okay? Who in the morning?
Commandos.
Who in the morning? Commandos. Who in the morning? Commandos. Aha, so this evening when you hear me shout Who in the Mornin, I want to hear the same thing again, okay? All right. Thank you, PJ. These two films, in programming them together, I want to talk about their intersections in terms of return, matrilineal return, and healing, right? They both take us back to either the west coast of Africa or places that are prominently populated by the descendants of Africa. Ade, I want to talk about the importance of story, please. You could have just told us a story about food, but you didn't. You brought your whole self to the table. Can you please tell me about the power this experience had, the power of cinema in healing and being able to tell this story for you?
Thank you for your question. Hi, y'all. I'm a little emotional, so if a tear drops down, just don't mind me.
That's okay. We crying too. Don't worry.
I think storytelling is so important because that stays. You know, it doesn't go anywhere. It's a way for those when I'm gone. You know, my daughter's in the crowd today. Imara, she'll be 10 in a couple weeks. And when I'm not here, this is something that she can take with her. This is something that anyone can take with them. So storytelling is such an integral part of healing and documenting and keeping things alive. The way I grew up, well, in West Africa as a whole, recipes don't exist. We don't write things down. We have oral traditions.
Yes.
So this now serves as a way for me to go back, to have a point of reference, and then not just me, everyone else too. So I think it's so important. I've learned, I never imagined this, so I thank my friend Brad here for this. But I have learned that telling the stories and being a voice makes it true, puts it in your face, and allows other people to connect and learn and shift maybe their own perspectives.
There's a line in Akwekwe Emezi's Fresh Water that goes, the quickest way to break a child is to remove the mother. How does it make you feel when your mother says at the end of the film that she is doing everything in her power to make it right?
Oh, man.
I'm sorry.
I did not know I was going to have a session today, but here I am. My mama and I, we've had a very interesting relationship.
Yeah.
I was 22 when we faced each other again for the first time.
Okay.
And at that point, I was a mama myself. I had just had my child. And so when we faced each other, it was very strange. She had to kind of hear the reality of my experience. And becoming a mother kind of opened this door in my brain that I like to say, like, the door opens up and there's some sort of wisdom that comes in there for most of us. Yeah. And so I remember looking at my child and being like, there is no possible way I could ever give you to somebody else and think they could take better care of you. So when I had that moment with myself, I said, I can't imagine what that must have felt like for her. Every day, not knowing, not having any kind of idea what was going on with her children. And so it allowed me to lead with grace. Wow. And hear her why. Yeah. And remove the title of mother, honestly, because, we all have people we give titles to. Those titles come with expectations. 90% of that time or 100% of the time, they disappoint us, but that's all of our own doing. And so after removing that and seeing her as a human, I was able to give grace and understand her. And time went by before we really started a real relationship. This happened for us during COVID, that we started getting this close. And so for me, I have, my mother and I are meeting each other. Your question is a great question for my little sister, Vanessa, who has not gotten there yet. But I feel incredibly grateful that I'm here. I'm at this place with my mom, that we're able to see each other. I tell her all the time that I don't look at her as a mom anymore. We kind of connect as mothers and as women now. And I feel blessed that I get to have a second chance at doing this with her, and I think she would probably feel the same way.
Well, thank you for that. I'm sorry to have put you on the spot, but this story, like you said in the film, is not a singular one, and I think your story in this film is an example for people to work towards healing. So I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Brad, can you tell me how you came to this story with Ade?
Yeah, so back in 2022, I had a career change. I just had been kind of in a place where I had worked for 17 years and I knew I needed to do something different. I knew I wanted to be a storyteller. I wanted to make films. So shortly after things started lifting with the pandemic, I got out a little bit more. I started volunteering at a cooking school. I took a class with Ade as a chef. I was an assistant for the class, and I had just decided to leave my job, and she started talking about Africa and where she came from and telling her story in the class. And I've lived overseas, I've traveled a lot, and I don't ever really look to travel as a tourist. I would much rather travel as, or embed myself into a culture as much as I can. And so I just saw an opportunity as a new filmmaker to be able to kind of have this experience where I can go and spend time in Africa and go places I probably would never go. And so I just asked her, in the class, I said, hey, have you ever thought about having someone follow you to Africa with a camera? I would go on my own dime. I will pay my own way. I will film for you for your spice company and create content for you. And I went home and immediately told my family I'm going to Africa. I don't think she thought I was for real. But about 8 months later, we were on a plane. And I bought my camera about a month before we flew out there.
Wow.
and we spent a month in Africa filming. And as I got to know her more, you spend a month with someone, you know, you get to know them a lot better. I realized that there was more to her story than just a spice company and some content about how you create these spices, how you develop them. And slowly I had to just gain that trust with her, especially as a white person, you know, not trying to profit off of her story, but trying just to get to know her and help her, because I knew she had a story to tell, and I knew that other people would benefit from her telling her own story. I just had to convince her of that, and that took time, and that took empathy, and it took bonding, and we were able to get to the point where, you know, we made this film together. Everything went through her because it's her story.
Yes.
I was just kind of the vehicle to kind of help her tell it.
He tricked you?
He tricked me.
How so?
Don't let her say that.
He said, we're going to go film you making spices with these women. And then it became, hey, Day, lay bare here and tell people everything about you.
Yeah.
You know, but we had a moment, I remember it very vividly. It was my grandmother's 90th birthday. And when I go home, it's a lot for me sometimes because I'm relearning so much.
Yeah.
I'm relearning my culture, I'm relearning the languages, and then there's such a disconnect for them in how they see me.
Yes.
And so sometimes it becomes too much. And I kind of ran away to go upstairs to get away from everyone, and he had come up, and then we started talking, and I don't know how many hours had gone by, and he's like, man, I wish I recorded that conversation. And then that's kind of when it all started. It shifted from, let's make a video for spices to, Ade, I think you should tell more people about your story. So that's what I mean by he tricked me.
Okay.
He didn't do anything wrong.
Well, Brad, thank you so much for helping Ade tell her story. This film is very beautifully shot. And I will tell you, you know, I've never been to Benin, but from what I can see, it looks so much like the Bahamas. It looks so much like what I have grown, what we have grown to know as vernacular is obviously a West African architectural vernacular.
Yeah, when I was watching y'all's film, I was taking notes on my phone, and I was like, something about this, when there were the shots of them dressing up and being out in the streets made me think of like our Voodoo Festival.
Okay.
Made me think of the Egunguns and how they dress. And then something about it all, I was like, well, where is this intersection between all of us as Black folks, wherever we are? That this thing, we have this thing about celebration and dance amidst the fog of how we've been treated, like what our history is in this world. And so I was sitting there writing down my notes about something was coming up for me. I was very inspired about this intersection and how we all connect.
Yes. And so I would like to ask James a few questions. How long have you been a Junkanoo, James?
Well, good night, everybody. Firstly, I've been a part of Junkanoo basically all of my life. I'm a 40-year-old male, and from you're born, you're into Junkanoo in the Bahamas. But physically on the parade, I've been Russian, like we call it, 28 years.
28 years.
Yes.
Were you on that Ghana trip?
Yep, of course I was on that Ghana trip, and you know, I got the opportunity, and I still feel great today for actually going where I feel like we're from.
I was just going to ask you, how has your experience now in the rush, in the parade, changed since you have had this return to Ghana?
Well, honestly, when you even asked that question, I got goosebumps. So, you know, it's more of a spiritual thing for me versus just telling a story. So when I take part in the Junkanoo parade now, it's like enlightening because I actually know why we do what we do. You know, a lot of times in life we do things just because we see everybody doing it and it's the culture. But when you actually know why we doing what we doing and the fight that our ancestors went through for this actual celebration and many more like our celebration, it's wonderful.
I can imagine. So, PJ, I want to ask you that one line in the film where Chris is narrating and he's telling us the story of the similarities and differences in the celebration, and he talks about the Bahamians being the only ones who shake the cowbells that violently because, and them in their return to Ghana, the Ghanaians saying to them, you were calling for your ancestors to come and rescue you. I almost burst out crying, okay? There are a lot of stories about Junkanoo, and we're gonna go ahead and open it up for question and answer soon. I know I'm about to get run off the stage. PJ, I wanna ask you, there are a lot of stories and films about Junkanoo, but why this story and and a lot of them are told from the outside, right? We don't get a lot of insiders to tell our stories. What does it feel like to tell this story? We've been practicing Junkanoo in the Bahamas for 3 centuries. How does it feel? Why this story? And how does it feel to get to tell it from the inside?
So, I come from a journalism background, and I love just telling stories and making sure that it's told correctly and that you get everything right about it and you explain the things that haven't been explained. And I've always wanted to do something on Junkanoo. I just been broke. So, I mean,
That's
as a
real.
filmmaker, we're still broke, but you know.
Yeah.
But I saved up what money I could over the last, 5 years, paid out of pocket for everything. And my filmmaker partner, Jonathan, he's from New Orleans. He was the other voice you probably heard in the film. And we did a film about Mardi Gras Indians, and I was like, he really didn't know anything about Junkanoo. And I was like, man, we got something very similar to this. And I think we need to tell this story next because it's very similar. We all have this connection that needs to be told. And I'm from the Bahamas. I was raised in America. I moved to America when I was 10. But I go back a million times a year, like we all do. And Junkanoo has always been this thing in my heart that I'm like, oh, why doesn't anybody in America know about this? Besides, here in the Carolinas or, in Miami. And I just, when I finally was able to put together, finally get the funds for the film, I searched just to find someone who was very passionate about the film. And it's the strangest story. I spoke with many people, and at some point, during Junkanoo season, it gets busy, so everybody kind of drifted off. But a cousin of mine was like, hey, I think you need to talk to somebody. And that's how I found Angelique. And once we spoke for a few months, and I was like, yeah, she is the perfect person to tell this story, or at least to help tell this story. She connected us with Chris, and once we finally started connecting the dots with Ghana and just that Belize and Jamaica, Bahamas, Carolina, I was like, yeah, this is something that like him, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it because I know it's a story that needed to be told. And once I had, Angelique says it all the time, the ancestors were literally calling and saying, there was no way we would have found each other at the time that we really wanted to do the film. And because it happened at that moment, I knew that it was the perfect time to tell the story. It was right after COVID. A lot of things happened in America. A lot of stuff happened in the last 4 years. And even though we're in the Bahamas, it kind of affected us as well because it dealt with our tourism and just how it affected the economy there. So once we spoke and she basically said, it doesn't matter what money we have. It doesn't matter, we're gonna do this because we love it. And she was like, you need to tell this story the right way. She made sure and told me, if you don't tell the story the right way, we ain't doing this. And I agreed. I was like, I only want to tell it one way because there have been stories out there. And to have the story told by me as a Bahamian and her as one of the people who are like the driving forces back home, like it was the perfect combination to really tell the story the right way, historically and emotionally.
Yes, yes. So I think we have about 5 minutes left. I have many more questions, as I'm sure you do. We can take about 1 or 2 questions, but please mingle with the filmmakers and the Junkanus in the lobby after we're done. And like I said, don't forget, 9 o'clock, we dancing, right? I think I see a hand back here.
Yes, so both of them were just amazing. I cried, and I looked around and many people cried. And instead of a question, I just want to say thank you for your attention to all the detail. I think in particular with the first one, what really moved me was this sense of, like, when I think about HBCU bands, I think about other groups that are engaged in really large-scale activities of, be it Greek-led organizations stepping and the sounds, all of that to me was so connected. And I just appreciate, like for me, the first time seeing all of that intersectionality. And it just was a through line from Ghana to Benin to everywhere. That was like amazing. And thank you for that. That was just a gift, I think, to all of us here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hand over here.
Hi. Thank you, you filmmakers, for the wonderful stuff that you do. I'm also a storyteller, but I'm going to, because of time, I'll cut to the chase. Ade,
Yes.
yeah, I'm South African, and I was intrigued by your story. And I want to revert back to your dad, the commander. When I saw that, I felt there was an element missing, which is related to, given the Ghanaian history, the time of Kuruma, the coup d'etats and so forth. There was a culture of African military heads or soldiers who tended to send their children outside of the country for safety reasons. And I sit here and ask myself, did your dad know something that was to take place in Ghana in sacrificing the 2 young ladies to go to the US? It's something that you need to research with your mother. It will take time. I think there is something there that I feel the film is incomplete, right? But I don't think it's fair for you to be quick with your mother. She still has a story to tell in relation to the decision who took the decision? Was it your father or was it the 2 of them? It's work that you still have to do as part of your healing journey. I'm intrigued by your parents in the US. We don't talk about them. I know that you are hurt. You don't want to see them or know anything about them. In those years that you were with your parents in the US, was there any communication between you here in the US and your parents? It's missing in the film, unfortunately.
Yes, great question and great thought. My father has passed away, and so there's so many questions I have for him that, for the most part, I won't have many answers. But thank you for that. And for your second question, we purposely don't talk about my parents here in the U.S. for my protection and theirs as well. So we just keep it away from this story completely. We allude to them, but there is definitely a safety issue, so we do our best to be mindful of that. As far as communication between my parents, I spoke with my parents maybe maybe once. If I was lucky, maybe twice a year. It wasn't, when I got here, it was very clear, it was made very clear to me that I was to not speak any of my home languages. I was supposed to speak only English, and I was supposed to immerse myself into this culture. So all ties were quite severed, and I was meant to be American. And that's the life I lived for 7 years. But you know, in my healing journey, I'm in a place where I'm okay. I'm totally okay not having a relationship with them at all. I don't have one at all. I don't speak to them at all. I'm more concerned about reconnecting the pieces of my identity as a Beninese woman, while building this bridge between that and the Black experience, and finding ways for us to connect as a diaspora, as an African diaspora, so we can heal together. I see both sides, because I grew up here from such a young age, that there's a disconnect between all of us as Africans and as Black folks in the diaspora. We need to meet each other and have those necessary conversations, and that's kind of what my entire experience has led me to. How do I do this work to create safe spaces for us to have those types of conversations? And that's what food has allowed me to do now. But thank you very much for your first comment. It's not something, I don't put pressure on my mom at all. I just kind of give her space to be the person that she is. But it is a great thought that you've just put in my mind, and I'm gonna be thinking about it. So thank you.
Okay, I'm getting the signal, guys. I want to say thank you to our contributors, our filmmakers, subjects, participants. I want to say thank you for adding thoughtful conversation about these films. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Angelique McKay and Christopher Davis and all the work that they did to make Who in the Morning possible, and a reunion to our Ghanaian cousins possible, okay? Don't forget, 9 o'clock, Who in the Morning? All right, thanks, guys. Yeah. Thank you.
Good people, remember our marketplace in the community room, just outside of the doors. We have Chop House Barbecue food truck, as well as hot dogs outside the Hayti Heritage Center.